of 3773 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. Coming on Power Talk, thank you so much for making us part of your day today. And without further ado, in life sometimes things take very unusual twists, and you sort of put yourself out there in a very vulnerable way. And then someone comes back and meets you halfway in their authentic self. And my guest is somebody who, is a very supportive person, is a very giving person, and tries her best to walk a path that is humble and sanctified. And I wish her all the blessings in the new year coming up, new calendar year. Kaya Mindlin, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Oh, thank you. What a sweet, lovely introduction, Jake. Happy solstice.
Happy solstice, 12/21/21. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to talk to you about if when you decided to try to walk an ordained path and how you work with your ego on that.
Tell me more what you mean.
Let me play an audio clip for you, and then we'll
sure.
we'll come back.
All right.
Sometimes people who are into materialism look at generated life. It's something that's, not really ordained, you see. And I believe in ordained, and music is ordained. It's not generated. We generate it through synthesizers and everything, and maybe through programs and software. But the real soulful music is an ordained thing, and to get to it, we have to be submissive. We have to believe from our heart and our soul that, we are just a little conduit. You see, everything else is already existing. We are tuning in, And so that philosophy has taken me into a journey in life as being a musician. I call myself a musician, but I think it's really more of my search to be one with the metaphysical, to be one with a higher authority, I think.
Kayama, so he's a musician. That's Ashwin Batish, but you are a healer and somebody who's connected to the metaphysical, and so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. Like you're not into you guys aren't driving around in sports cars and stuff, and you have and I actually, that was my question, is did you actually leave Princeton or the East Coast because so much of what is considered success is a generated life and not an ordained life?
Yes. Okay. So I love what he was saying. I wholeheartedly agree with him about that. So yeah. Okay. I did leave the East Coast because for me, it wasn't necessarily the materialism in the way that we think of as things, objects, and ownership of objects, but it was, for me, it was a limiting and narrow field of existence because of what constituted a successful life. In my experience, for my experience, for whatever karmas, I had to leave. I had to come to the West Coast and meet my husband and find certain teachers and so on, so that all as it should be. But there was an aspect in which I had already encountered yogic teachings, philosophy, meditation, and practices while being on the East Coast, and I saw that for me to live the life that I wanted to pursue, the idea of what a successful life for me, which was really the pursuit of a deep sense of happiness and satisfaction, that didn't constitute a successful life in the realms in which I was walking on the East Coast, more academic, where the first question people ask is, what do you do? And they mean profession, and then they're calculating, how educated are you, and how much money do you make, and how professional are you, and how high are you on the ladder?
Right.
And I don't think, for sure, not all people, you're on the East Coast, clearly not all people are that way, but I needed to break out of that.
I'm from there too. and so it's it's an adherence to, what is common, like it's understanding what the vibe is, and instead of sticking it out and being resentful, you were like, I have to leave what was the definition of success, by the way? And I don't know if you were, what was your first time connecting with yogic, a real transcendent yoga experience in your life before it became an ordained thing?
Right, before it was formalized, I will say that, I've touched on this when we spoke before. When I was very young, at some of my earliest memories, I had this internal, constant question about, is it possible to just be happy as the baseline? Is there such a thing as a permanent happiness? I was craving that, and I was also curious to understand why we don't have that. Why are we not happy all the time? This is a big question from very young, like 5, 6 years old, kind of, an existential angst for a very young person.
Yeah, I mean, you see, that's the thing. Your soul, like, that's why we are connected, is because we have old souls. So the wisdom was there. I mean, there were other things that weren't, but the wisdom was there from like a young age. I can see in your eyes, like you already have the wisdom of an adult.
Right, and that that has its own.
It's not the greatest thing. Absolutely.
It can be a very painful existence until you actually can break through to the other side of it, for sure. Which for me took guidance and strategy.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's still an evolution.
And so on.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever fully realized, but you just sit in the mess more comfortably and then thrive and do your own thing. And but to me, Ashwin is talking about like, did you ever have, what was the thing that you coveted the most? Was there any material thing? Did you ever have a phase like that? I mean,
no.
Never. I love it. I mean,
I wanted stuff, you mean?
Oh, whatever. I mean, I don't know. You were like traveling, or there was like some kind of gluttony in some way.
Yeah, I'm not really built that way, but interested. Like when I met my husband, he always laughed because it was like he thought he was a real sadhu, meditative soul owning nothing. And I think, he owned a pillow and a blanket and some books, and I owned a pillow and a blanket and some library books. So I think I had a lamp on the floor so I could read my library books. It was a kind of and it wasn't that I was in denial of the material world, but I just wasn't super conscientious of it. But I will say this, and also, though I grew up in a wealthy community where there was a lot, there was a lot of affluence. My dad was self-employed. My parents were musicians in the performing arts, and so my personal reality wasn't really based on tons of affluence. The side of the family that was most influential to me was immigrants. My grandmother sold paper bags for a penny each, on the streets of New York.
That's beautiful. My God. I mean, that's so heavy. So you just floored me.
It's heavy. Yeah, heavy lineages. But I think that contributes, to a lot of that kind of existential angst, which points us in the direction of seeking. It's a kind of an ancestral healing in a way. But I have to say, I mean, if you see me now, I have, gold bangles on my wrist, and I actually, I like nice things. I've actually, as I've matured on a yogic path, I would say that I am in less denial of the value of the material aspect of the world, but it's being embraced as a form of the divine, as a Shakti. It's a form of power. It's it's an expression of the divine. And so then one need not be grasping at things as though one's happiness in life depends on it, but one need also not deny certain aspects of the material world as though it takes you further away from consciousness. If all is consciousness manifesting as form, then you can have the forms or not have the forms, and you're not depending on it, on having or not having, if that makes sense.
How do you celebrate the holidays? Things were cheaper when I was a kid. And we, I got He-Man figures. I didn't have a car. I didn't even have a license. I didn't crave any materialism. There were certain things I liked, but talk about how you, with your sons, it's inspiring because you're infusing a lot of enlightenment to them, wisdom that they can then carry forward and be part of the lineage. But do you give? I'm sure kids in Princeton were like, Kai, I just got a new Porsche or whatever, Land Rover. I'm from Long Island, these. There's no ghetto of Princeton, so your parent, everybody.
Oh, yes, there is. Oh, yeah.
Did you live in the ghetto? Is that where you lived?
So my husband now calls it WOW, even though he didn't grow up there, but he spent a lot of time there with, visiting my mom. So WOW is west of Witherspoon. So there's a street in Princeton called Witherspoon Street. And essentially, this is pretty interesting.
Wow, I got to write this down.
So when I was growing up, it was this way, and I think it's still the same. Most of the lower income families who were Black and Hispanic lived on the west side of Witherspoon Street. And this is really interesting, actually. My understanding is that students at Princeton University, a long time ago, they would come with their servants who were Black, and the students would live on campus, and the servants lived in that neighborhood, which still today is a Black and Hispanic neighborhood. And my family lived just on the other side of Witherspoon, of that dividing line. And I grew up, all the wealthier kids in town went to summer camp all summer. These were the white kids. I did not go to summer camp. And so I was hanging out at the public pool all summer with all the Black kids in the west of WOW.
Wow, this is now we've broken through here now. You were part of you were one of the cats. It's unbelievable. Tell me about that experience. Obviously, did you, you saw humanity at a very young age. Because you know what? I spent 14 years at a Jewish summer camp in upstate New York. And you know what? It was the best thing that ever happened in my life. It made me who I was. I'm not, there's something to be said for having to survive in a bunk with 30 other dudes for 8 weeks, and then whatever, you just you become yourself. And so there's nothing wrong with that. But in terms of seeing, you guys still had, by the way, you put Princeton on an envelope if you're on Witherspoon or west of Witherspoon. It's still considered Princeton.
Oh, yeah. It's all Princeton.
Unbelievable. I'm going to live there, I think. So the... No, I think... did you... Because you just seeing a broader cross-section of humanity and people that were facing a lot of adversity, do you feel like it opened your heart?
Yeah, and I feel that it also... I find this to be true of myself, and I'm sure it is with you and a lot of other people that end up being spiritual seekers as well as musicians and artists, because we are outsiders to mainstream society. Right. And outsiders, we really never fit in anywhere, and we tend to live lives in which we've never, even if we appear to be fitting in, we never really, in our hearts, feel like we completely are.
That's right.
In, right? We're outsiders, which makes us observers. And so I didn't fit in. with the Jewish kids, I was half Jewish. You know, I wasn't a rich kid. I wasn't an academic family.
You were a unicorn.
I wasn't black, but half my friends were black.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't white because I have a kind of a mixed race ethnic background.
Really?
I really didn't fit in any particular category. You know, I played sports in the fall and I did musical theater in the spring. It was a mix. And so I think that it gave me, I always had kind of an outsider view where I could be simultaneously at home everywhere and nowhere, and with anyone and with no one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I was hanging out with, you know, with Latina friends, and they would think I was that. If I'm with my black friends, then people would think I was black. If I was with Jewish friends, people would wonder, am I Jewish or Israeli? It's sort of that fitting in with everyone and on the inside, not really fully belonging anywhere. But that creates a kind of an objectivity where you can actually start to see things as they really are, because you're never entirely caught up. You don't get lost in the material reality because you kind of can't.
I mean, it's still fascinating though. Like, obviously you were a self-confident person. What other mixed ethnicity are you? You're Jewish and what else?
Right. So my dad was a European Jew and my mom is Arab. And now Arabs are brown, although I think it was in the 1950s and 60s, Arabs living in America fought to be categorized as white on the census.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not hip to this. Who you saying? What? Where was she from? How do you spell it?
My mom's family was from Iraq and Lebanon.
I am just
Arab.
All right, now it's all wow. This is just so beautiful. Oh my God.
So the joke of my family was, if you marry an Arab and a Jew, you get a yogi.
How did how did your parents meet?
They met at a party. You know, the good old-fashioned way that you meet in the 70s, 60s, 70s.
Did they have to overcome any family obstacles in order to get married?
Oh yeah, my mother's father was vehemently opposed to her marrying a Jew, but he got over it pretty quickly because they were just said it's non-negotiable. My father's parents, I'm not sure whether they might have minded that she didn't come from money, but I'm not sure their feelings about it. But they didn't really care whether my father married a good Jewish girl because they were not religious at all. In fact, my father, I realized this just a couple of weeks ago, that I think I inherited spiritual speaking from my dad, because his parents were, you know, culturally Jewish, but not practicing at all.
Sure.
No synagogue.
That was the way I was raised.
Anything. Yeah. And my father, as a kid, said, I want a bar mitzvah. And he chose to go to Hebrew school and have a bar mitzvah. And my grandmother, he was a seeker, and my grandmother's joke was that they served lobster bisque at the bar mitzvah. It obviously is not kosher.
Dude, oh man, I love that. I love that. Oh my, I'm so unhip to the, whatever. I'm doing my own spiritual work. Okay. Like I'm not, my mom was Catholic. My dad was Jewish. So they didn't give me any spiritual compass, and there were drawbacks and there were positives to that. It allowed me to really find my own path in Taoism. And now it's all just sort of coming into fruition for me, but you have Middle Eastern roots in you.
Yeah.
And that's that's really amazingly unique. I didn't know that. I just was out in Santa Cruz and San Luis Obispo to see my dear friends Mapache play music, and I stopped by Jamie Cassidy's house, and she's the daughter of Neil Cassidy and Carolyn Cassidy. And, we were talking, she was talking about her mom and dad and why there was always a struggle about why they, spiritually, why they connected and why they were together. And they began to, they went to a Christian, they used to take the kids to a Christian Science church for a while, but then they found this book called Many Mansions, and it was about past life regressions. And they would go to this channel or this person who could generate, their past lives. And there was a lot of torture and trauma in Neil's life, but it gave them some understanding. Like what you just referenced about your dad is like you actually derived that knowledge from somebody. But this is a case where you were going to a medium to go back farther in your lifetimes. And I just wonder if that is, if in some ways you are a channel in some ways for people is that something that you think about based on the fact that your families come from very different, very close in proximity, but different upbringings?
I think that certain people end up carrying more ancestral burdens than others, in terms of having some kind of a responsibility to do some healing for their lineage. And I know that, among my siblings, that has fallen on me more than my other siblings. I know that between my two children, one of them is carrying more of the burden of the Jewish side of my family, and the other one is carrying some of the burdens of the Sicilian side of my husband's family.
Wow.
And you can see it in people's characteristics, even in how they look and how they are in the world. You can see that we each, and I say the burdens, we also carry the blessings. Like I'm saying, I was a recipient of the blessing of my father being a spiritual seeker. I'm the recipient of the blessing of my parents being musical. But I'm also, as we all are, I'm the recipient of certain ancestral burdens. And we all are inheriting so much ancestrally. And from the Vedic viewpoint, in the Indian tradition, we see that we have work to do in this life to kind of heal some of the ancestral wounds so that we can be recipients of the ancestral blessings so that we can move forward as a soul and kind of move forward in our life journey. There's certain burdens that can be kind of blocking us from moving forward, and sometimes those burdens are ancestral and we have to do some work there, whether it's with a channel or a medium or doing certain kinds of rituals. And I would say in my personal life, it's not something I was not super aware at that level. It was pointed out to me by a mentor who is a kind of a channel, but she's intuitive, but she uses some specific systems in the Vedic tradition, Vedic astrology and other kinds of remedies. And
right, it's just not off the top of your head like Jake Feinberg. Yeah, there's actually something rooted there. No, I'm curious about...
Right, like she was able to see me and see a horoscope and see like you're carrying this burden that's in the way and you need to do this work and you need to do it right now and you need to do it for this many days. And then she initiated me in taking other people through that journey. So I certainly don't necessarily, I don't channel. I'm not trying not to or trying to. It's just not part of my path. But I have been doing work, with people in terms of lifting certain ancestral burdens and calling in ancestral blessings when it's something that is, something that they're called to do, if that makes sense.
Can you talk about why you went to this channel? What were you trying to get? And also, why of all your siblings did it fall? Why do you say it fell on you more than them?
Well, to the second part, you can just see it. I have kind of because I've been more of an intentional seeker of spiritual growth, whereas my siblings, I love them, but that's not their path. Mm-hmm. They're comfortable in the material realms. And
the generated life.
that's beautiful
No, I did.
too.
Yeah,
So I think people that end up being spiritual seekers we're trying to fast track through some stuff. And in order to do that, we're like, we don't want to come, maybe we've come already for a lot of lives, or we want to we're ready to round it up, so we're trying to move forward in a particular way as an individual soul, but that also involves, handling some of the past ancestral stuff. So in terms of my life choices, I can see it relative to siblings, and also even in terms of just carrying certain characteristics of the family, looking like certain family members, carrying on certain traditions. So I have carried on traditions of both sides of my family, whereas my siblings just simply haven't for the most part. And
can you give an example? Well, forget about the comparison. Tell me a tradition from your mom's side and your dad's side that you continue to carry on.
So I carry on a lot of the cooking from my Arab side.
And what is that? Can you talk a little bit about the way they cook? I actually am not that hip to Arab food. There's just not a lot of Arab.
You are. Think about,
No, I mean, I eat Indian food, but I don't know. I never go to an Arab restaurant. I don't know. I mean, there's just not.
Middle Eastern. Think Middle Eastern food. Lebanese food. Tabbouleh.
Yeah, it's okay. So like hummus and stuff, or like what do you cook?
Hummus, tabbouleh.
That's delicious.
Everything with tahini.
Yes.
My husband's love letter to his Arab wife is buying these huge bulk containers of
yeah, you know tahini. What? That you could live on that, man. I love that.
I'll take it with honey. I'll take it with olive oil. I'll take it on anything, just all of the tahini. So, I don't know how to just. If people have been to a Lebanese restaurant, they would be familiar with the kind of Arab food.
So you carry on the food. You carry on that, and is it like a strict adherence to it? Like, I mean, do you strafe?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like we only eat Middle Eastern food in the family. We eat all kinds of food in our house. But, I learned certain recipes. I have the handwritten recipes from my grandmother. I spent more time in the kitchen than my siblings. I inherited the huge brass mortar and pestle that my great-grandmother brought on the boat from Iraq. That was handed down to me from my grandmother.
So cool.
So for whatever and it wasn't like I had asked for it. It's just some kind of, we all have these threads in our lives that if we take a step back and look at them, we're usually not aware of it in the moment. But it was due to starting to do some ancestral work that I was able to take a step back and see, oh, yeah, this has been a thread, all along. And in terms of my father's side, we've picked up in our household, doing Friday Sabbath. We do Shabbat, we do the prayers, and we do Hanukkah prayers. We haven't picked up a lot of the other traditions yet, but that was actually also assigned work to me by my mentor, who said you need to pick up some of the traditions of that side of your lineage. So we only just kind of started asserting some of those things in the last couple of years, which is interesting. It's like a very Indian Vedic teacher told me as a remedy for my life and for my children's lives to do these Jewish rituals. It's just so interesting.
Yeah, it's just so insane. And then there is methodology behind it in the Vedic tradition. I mean, it's do you celebrate? Is there any Christmas or Hanukkah?
Yeah, we kind of do it all.
Yeah, right.
We did Hanukkah. Hanukkah came early this year, so we did Hanukkah.
Yep.
And we do Christmas. I grew up doing Christmas. My Arab side of the family was Arab Orthodox Christian, so they did Christmas. My
Arab Orthodox Christian, Arab Orthodox, not Muslim, Arab Orthodox.
Not Muslim.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is mind-blowing right now.
Yeah, we have a lot cooking in this pot.
Yeah. I got another audio clip to play for you, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Sure.
So that it's very easy to relate to someone who did something extraordinary and see if they were addicted to something and use that as a definition of who they were and what they had to offer. Well, Ulysses Grant was an alcoholic, but we don't remember him as a famous drunk. Abraham Lincoln had all kinds of melancholy and psychiatric problems. We don't remember him as a great neurotic. We don't remember Sigmund Freud as a coke addict because he was a big coke snorter in the days when that was supposed to be legitimate. And at the time, he and other people thought that was the path to nirvana. Our whole history is full of people of distinction who messed up in their private life or their health. When I was with Charlie Parker way back in 1952, it was the first time I ever heard the expression, do as I say, don't do as I do. And all those people, when I was surrounded with that, and they saw, I might appear to be nuts, but I wasn't strung out on anything. They said, stay clean, as they were snorting, shooting up, drinking, etc. And there was a certain morality in that whole community that if you didn't do that, you were better off and you shouldn't do that. And I mention that because in the 1960s, drugs became institutionalized as a way, a pathetic version of being what was supposed to be hip. And of course, Charlie Parker, way before Huey Lewis wrote that song, said to me, the hippest thing is to be a square.
Kayama, that is the most stone genius composer, arranger, and musician, David Amram, who's still with us, bless him. And, there's a couple of things I wanted to hit on with you is that I wanted you to talk to cats about, do you believe in the big picture? I just want you to talk to people about who are very beat up about things that they have in their mind succumbed to. They're defeated due to addiction or to feeling very down, not having resources, et cetera, about the bigger picture and the ability to create your own legacy so that all the hard times that you think are engulfing you is not what you're remembered for and what your lineage will continue to be.
Yeah. I mean, there's a tantric expression. The very ground you fall on is the same ground you have to use to push yourself back up again. And to me, this is about, you do have to actually pick yourself back up again.
Right.
It's not in this life, in the next life.
Yeah.
But it's not that you have to hide the truth about your personal history and your story. It is part of your journey, and you can actually harness it to push yourself up. In other words, what is the seed that leads us to something like addiction or other forms of pain, habits that hold us down and pull us back? There's something that causes that. And it's often a seeking. It's a deep seeking. It's a deep dissatisfaction and a deep seeking for something better. And we don't find it, we find it in drugs, or we find it in food, or we find it in sex, or we find it in certain kinds of relationships, or even addiction to work. But why do we get addicted to it? And can we find something that's going to give us what we really want and more, which addiction doesn't do? I think it's not necessarily that one needs to be convinced, like, don't worry about it, you won't be, who cares how you're remembered, I guess.
Well, I want to say, because this is like, outside. You're a hip cat, but he was referring to Charlie Parker, and Bird is considered the greatest musician of all time, and all the cats thought, because he was on junk and heroin, they thought that he was able to get that sound because he was on this drug. And what he
Right.
was saying there was, he goes, don't do as I do, meaning like you don't want to be strung out and you don't want to be a junkie. And so I guess it's more like what I'm trying to get you to talk about. And you're riffing and it's awesome, but I just want you to talk about people to be themselves and not try to cop somebody else's groove or get in awe of anybody. The point is, you can create, you can do it. I mean, it's just, you have to think for yourself. Like you're on your own path. Like, you've been on your own journey. Like you were like, I'm cutting my own trail, and the cats that come and I meet along the way, we will live in harmony, but we're going to go our own way. It's that song. It's the song. But it's like, how do you go your own, like how do you create that balance to be able to do that?
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I'm thinking about the person who's dealing with addiction. Like, who cares what other people think? You got to pull yourself out.
That was perfect. I'm just saying, like, it just came in my head. Your answer was perfect. It's just, this is, we're going off in this direction now,
Yeah. So, I think you cannot be anyone other than yourself, no matter how much you try. And even, when you try to be someone else, your idea of who and what someone else is only your idea. It's never the reality.
Never the reality.
So you could it's never the reality, what we see on the outside. It's never the reality of someone else. There's actually a quote, it's one of the most well-known verses of the Bhagavad Gita, in which Krishna says to Arjuna, it is better to do your dharma, meaning do your job, your responsibilities, your life, do you.
Yeah.
It is better to do that than it is for you to do someone else's dharma, even if you do it perfectly. It's better to do you imperfectly than it is to try to do someone else perfectly.
I understand. It's profound. You got to show me where in the Bhagavad Gita where that is, where that's said. I'd love to read that.
Yeah, I'll have to find it. I think it's in the second or the third chapter. I'll find it and send it to you. So, and this is when Arjuna is struggling. He's, many people know just the gist of the story, but the Bhagavad Gita, the main character, Arjuna, is on the battlefield, about to fight the worst,
Totally.
battle in history.
Yep.
One of the worst, and he doesn't want to do it. He's like, I think it would be, he goes into a tailspin, he has a nervous breakdown, and he starts rationalizing why he should get out of Dodge. Like, this is going to cause destruction, it's unethical. All of a sudden, on the day of, now it's unethical. Now it's, I'm going to suffer, I'll go to hell, all these things. But the truth is that this is one of these kind of, it's called a dharma yuddha. Dharma yuddha means it's a war that has to be done, or else, humanity will just fall to pieces as we know it. It'll be the destruction of, the manifestation, essentially. There's no choice.
Right.
And this is where, he's like, I think I should go meditate on a mountain somewhere and get enlightened. And Krishna is saying, no, you are a warrior. This is your responsibility in life. It is up to you. You have to do this. And yes, you could go to a mountain and you could meditate perfectly, but that isn't yours to do. This is yours to do. It's like if a mother woke up one day, a breastfeeding mother wakes up and the baby's crying to nurse, and the mother says, well, I think I'd rather, meditate and not nurse the baby right now. No, that's not yours to do. Yours to do is nurse the baby. It's better to do that, even imperfectly. Even the mother who says, I don't think I'm built to be a mother, I'm not the best mother, I didn't choose to be a mother, this fell in my lap. It doesn't matter. It's yours to do. And it's better to do you imperfectly than to strive to do something that isn't yours to do. That's part of your soul's journey to be fulfilled. That's the door that's open. You walk through that threshold and you do it to the best of your ability. And on the other side of it, we find we are so much more fulfilled doing what we're here to do.
Exactly. So how have you dealt with the stigma and the peer pressure of Western society?
I mean, I just don't feel it. I don't care.
No, I mean, what has been what I wanted to ask you about? No, this is kind of leads into the next question. How have your relationships been affected by the pandemic? There's a lot of trauma.
Sure.
There's been a lot of death, a lot of different kinds of things. But, I was shocked because I don't think I realized that there were just a lot of people with a lot of different beliefs. And the kids have really suffered. I just wanted you to talk about, in your mind, like how so as a result, when relationships fall apart, there's resentment or anger, and I just or maybe peace of mind. But I just wanted to know how you've navigated that as a family.
Yeah. And I've had a lot of people come to me with this question, of course, not surprisingly, in the past, 2 years.
Really?
So,
it's never dawned on me until recently, and I'm like, I don't know, because my kids, I don't know, I didn't have any issues with them interacting with other kids not wearing. I wasn't going to let them not be kids.
Right.
But I realized that there were certain, and I guess I just didn't know anybody that was that uptight, and so more than the specifics as to why, I just wonder what your advice, how have you dealt with it, and what would be your advice to people? Because I know that people want to hang on to this stuff because, like you said, they're not being themselves; they're doing somebody else's stuff.
Right. This is a tough call. We have to really make the decisions as individuals, and within a family, and then within a community, and that might be different moment to moment and circumstance to circumstance. What certain values we're not willing to relinquish, and which ones we're willing to bend given the circumstance. But essentially, in terms of an overview, because this is obviously a big topic and a multi-layered question. In terms of overall, how have I or we as a family handled this time in terms of psychologically looking at it? We sort of look at the broader, I look at the broader themes here, because I know a lot of people like to say the pandemic, as if we can just put everything in this little box that has to do with a virus, but it's so much broader than that. We have so much happening in our field right now that has to do with what's happening in government, what's happening in corporations, what's happening in communities, what's happening in different kinds of institutions and systems and within families. And so when I look at the broad view, even in terms of astrologically what's happening, is we have just been through a several-year period that was about narrowing. It was about there was fear and rigidity, and I'm not saying that fears weren't legitimate at times, but it's just a time frame of fear and a narrowing of life, a kind of a pulling inward. The word restriction comes to mind. Mm-hmm. And so whether it was going to be due to a virus or due to something else, we could see, people that were looking at astrology, we could see something was going to happen in 2020 for a couple of years that was going to drastically change life and was going to narrow or restrict certain aspects of life. Certain doorways will be closed at this time. So what does that mean? It means literally doorways to businesses were closed, doorways to schools were closed, doorways to certain relationships were closed, doorways to certain opportunities were closed, and on and on and on it goes. But also certain doorways are going to open at this time. For example, I've been able to work with so many students all over the globe in a way that I wasn't before. I've been able to study with certain teachers in the way that I wasn't before. I've been able to deepen certain aspects of relationship with my family because we're spending so much time together. I mean, we always spent a lot of time together, but our kids were just starting to go to school for the first time in 2019, and now everybody's home all the time again. So I take it more, it kind of fits with this question about, you know, living your individual life in general and not getting caught up in other people's desires or whatever. It's like, look at what is the circumstance and what can I do to not resist it and be in grace and get the most out of it. Mm-hmm. And so in terms of relationships with other people, what I have found in our family and with other families, whether it's because of distance, whether it's because of certain kinds of mandates, rules, or fears or whatever, certain relationships are off the table right now. But other relationships have deepened. And this goes back to kind of, again, this sort of a narrowing, certain doorways closing, other doorways opening. And I've talked to many people who say, well, you know, my siblings and I can't talk anymore because we have a different view on this. I can't, you know, people have shut off certain friendships, relationships, even relationships with parents and so on during this time, for better or worse. That's the reality right now. And so the attitude that we've taken as a family is just, well, let's just deepen, let's dig a well with the opportunities and the relationships that we do have right now. And we're not trying to not be ourselves. We're not trying to change other people's viewpoints. We definitely don't believe that there's one way that is the right way for all people at all times. There's no one size fits all to life. There's no one size fits all to anything. And so we just try to live in accordance with our ethics, you know, and check in from time to time. Is this right?
Right.
And we respect other people's choices as we always did before. I don't know why that should be.
Well, no, but that's the problem. You know what
right?
it is. Like I'm totally with you, but that, because like you said, there's these doorways have closed. People are crushed. Mm-hmm. that you would not compromise your ethics in order to make them feel more comfortable. And the relationship, the doorway is closed, and that's
right.
And that's why there's a fracture. It's just like, it's instead of that them not mandating it and just sort of like being precautious, hanging out and still treasuring the time, they feel rejection. And then there's the whole other polarization as it relates to politics in general, which is just sort of just kind of non-thinking at this point.
Yeah.
Because we're going through so much fundamental, changing,
Totally. And, I know that I work with hundreds of students on a weekly basis that have a very broad spectrum from one end to the other, politically,
right.
And in terms of all of these questions, how they're living their lives, the choices they're making right now around, the virus and other things, such a broad spectrum. And we are able to come together as, seekers of spiritual growth. And what I teach is about, the word in Sanskrit is sattva. Sattva is it's harmony. It's awareness and harmony. So we can live a life in which we are always picking the world apart, dividing the world apart, and deciding which side we're on. And that's called rajas. It's fire. It's it's the root of anger. It's the root of excessive passion. It's the root of divisiveness. The Sattvika attitude says, okay, we are diverse because manifestation manifests in variegated ways. We are not all the same. However, we have certain shared values that are inbuilt in us. For example, each of us wants to feel safe. Each of us wants to feel loved. Each of us wants to feel inspired. We share certain things. So what I do as a teacher and what I do in our personal life is look for what is shared, and then go from there.
Right.
And also take the viewpoint of non-fixation, non-obsessiveness, non-obsessive compulsiveness, because life is long. blessed be, you know.
Yeah,
Life is
I can't believe you
long.
just said that line. That's you're only the second cat I've heard to say that line before. Life is long.
Really?
Well,
It's
I mean, I
long.
don't.
And so we go
Sometimes, I mean, I actually life just completely. I mean, it's almost just stopped for me, and it's so beautiful because that's the one thing we have time. That's the one thing we need to treasure is time. But it's just the trauma, the collective trauma. Do you feel? Okay, so basically, you astrologically were seeing doorways, a narrowing, a stiffening, a tightening. That also relates to our socio-political, the lean towards autocracy. So, what astrologically, Kayama, are you seeing for the future right now? Or what are you seeing? Or what I want to know. I mean, you're on the pulse.
Oh gosh. I mean, I can't make a big prediction like that. It's my husband. That's his department.
Well, wait a minute. You said you saw the tightening coming. That wasn't happening in the moment. You sensed that before. I'm just saying, what's your gut?
I'm saying he sensed it before.
I love it. Okay, so
You'll have to get him on the show. But so in 2018, my husband Michael started writing some articles. He generally does not write articles. He generally does not make big global predictions, but he felt compelled in 2018 to start talking about 2020.
Wow.
And he wrote a series of articles about a several-year period that was coming, very rare, very unique. It was going to be very challenging. The world was going to feel upside down. He made a series of predictions about this time. Since then, people have been asking him the very question that you just asked me, okay, what now? And he's like, nope, I'm not doing that. I'm not in that business at this point. I'm just helping people with their individual lives, you know, counseling and so on. But the point is really not about like making predictions, even though I use that. It's really about this idea of a broad view, to see that life happens in phases. Our individual lives happen in phases. We can see we were really into something for a period of time and it fell away. Now we're into something else. And we can assume that certain things will fall away. Life undergoes a lot of transformation and change and growth in different phases. And that's true for the whole globe. And so I try to avoid getting fixated on something that's happening right now. We just deal with it as it comes, and we do that to the best of our ability. But we know that nothing lasts forever at the manifest level. So we sustain certain values, like I have a value for spiritual growth. I have a value for peace of mind, and that doesn't change. I keep in pursuit of that. And then I deal with life as it comes. I haven't closed doorways to anyone because I don't close doors to people. The door is open. But if I see that someone else is closing a door, then I let it be. I'm not trying to pry it open, right? I go, okay, and I also know that door may open again in the future. Why try to, you know?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's all this innate wisdom, Kayama, that you take. You know, it's sort of like in you. You know, you take it. You don't really see how. You know, I guess it just creates the aura that you have. I really wanted to ask you, like, have you ever been in a situation where you have had a student who has fallen in love with you?
Like romantically or just obsessively?
Well, I mean, yeah, I'd like somebody who sees you for, you know, a soulmate. Or how would you handle it if one of your students was infatuated with you?
I don't know if that's ever happened. I mean, so I have had students that, you know, I could take this in two ways. In a way, I'm sort of like, yeah, all of my students are in love with me, and I'm in love with all of my students. It's a completely love-bound relationship in a way. It's an ecstatic love. I sign all my emails, say love. My messages out to the world.
Absolutely. No, I think, yeah, so let's just say romantically, like somebody was very attracted to you. You know?
Right. I'll tell you this funny story and then I'll answer the question. Yeah. When I was because I've been teaching yoga and now I do a lot of things, but I started teaching yoga when I was 23. And in the form of yoga that I was teaching, most of the people that were teaching it were women in their 60s. So there was me, and then there was all these women in their 60s. And I was on a board, this yoga board for this yoga organization. I'm in my 20s, and they're in their 60s. And they're all saying, well, we don't have any men coming to our classes. We don't have any men in our classes. And I said, well, I have so many men in my classes. And one of them said, she said, I bet you do.
Oh, I love that line.
But I said, okay, so maybe they come but that's not, maybe they arrive in the door because they see a certain picture on a website or something like that. But that isn't why they stay, because I don't play that way. I don't gaze into people's eyes. There's nothing really, I know this of myself.
This is your gig. This is your gig. This is your purpose. It's high. It's next level. Yeah. It's totally like, the cats would come in, but they stay because it's healing for them.
Yeah. I've been very clear in who I am, what I'm about. If anyone was coming for that, they wouldn't stay. They wouldn't stick around because there's not going to be any traction. So there's no reason for them to stay. Having said that, I've had students from time to time have a kind of obsessive viewpoint where they're like, after one or two classes, they're like, sign me up for everything. You're the best everything I've ever encountered. And those are the students that 1 year later, they hate me. And this may not just be me. Maybe this is how maybe you've experienced this as well. And my husband, Michael, pointed it out after it happened. It hasn't happened a lot, but in 20 years of teaching, it's happened maybe 4 times, 5 times. And he pointed out that these are the person that is immediately obsessed, immediately signing up for everything. This is a person with a lack of mental stability. And so they go high, they go low. They put you up on a pedestal, you're falling off that pedestal, right?
Yeah, I would say also it's like there's longing for there's a codependency kind of element to it as well. But I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, well, no, you just kind of catalyzed something in me, which is to say that it's very important, I think, for a teacher, and I think this applies to a musician as well, to say, it isn't me. What you're in love with is the inner experience that is unfolding in you, and that is yours. And there are teachers and artists and performers and people that end up in a spotlight that take advantage of people thinking it's the person on the outside, and they want that dependency, right?
Right.
So, and I've had teachers in my life who cultivated that dependency in their students, and I witnessed it, and it is abusive, it is manipulative, it is painful for the student, because that if the teacher is responsible for your happiness, you are utterly dependent, and you'll never have it for yourself. And so in my work, I am always pointing back to, this is you. What you're experiencing is the sanctity of your own being. And we all have teachers and mentors and guides and systems that we should utilize. You can't do it alone, right? But it is yours within. And the teacher is only there to help the student kind of discover that spark and cultivate it into something that's even more than a spark, but always point out to the student that it is happening within you. It is you. It is yours entirely. It doesn't belong to the teacher. The same with an inner experience that's unfolding due to music or any kind of art form. That unfoldment, it's catalyzed by the art form, but the inner experience is theirs alone. They don't have to be dependent on, that performer or that art form.
Yeah, no, it's thinking that in this case you are some kind of, only with you can they get that experience, but it's they can get it there themselves. And there's a lot of I wanted you to just, as we finish up here, part 3 with Kaya Midlin. Bless
This
you.
is part 2. I think this is part 2.
This is part 3. Are you kidding me? Part two's being downloaded at like a record pace, and people are loving these interviews. But you know what it is like, will you? Are you doing any? I know it's hard now. There's so much stuff that's online, but I feel like I mean, for me, like I've been very selective, but in some ways, just totally going nuts, like at certain events, musical experiences, because I recognize that if I prevent myself from doing multisensory things that heal me, that in and of itself will create dis-ease. And so I have to, and I just wanted to know if there's something that you are going to implement, or are there any sort of events or things that, do you feel the need for actual human connection? Will you make an effort in some way to do some kind of in-person teaching next year?
Right now, I don't have the plan for that. I'm not, closed off to it, but I feel that I've been able to manage a lot of direct personal connection online, amazingly. And I'm, able to be with my family while doing that. And I'm able to reach a lot more students. So this is one of the reasons why, though I have been teaching online, I teach live exclusively. Right.
Right. I
look at every single person and every name, and we communicate directly, and there's live Q&A, and we really are able to,
it's authentic. It's
making it feel
absolutely.
Yeah,
I just, what it is like when you talk
real.
about again, we've just talked about the polarizations. I guess more to the point, like the doorways closing, the restriction. I feel like part of it is just we can't atrophy as a people, and so I mean, that's sort of like I'm not asking you to go out and sing Kumbaya, Burning Man or something, but it's like
never.
Never. No, never. No, I mean, it would just be no, it's cool. I mean, I think you're really you're very inspiring, Kayama. I mean, your ability to just absorb the stream of consciousness questions and then come at it with like a very succinct, I mean, you answered the questions when I didn't cut you off, and I'm really very proud of you and your family, and I love you very much, and I hope that we can continue our friendship. It's means a lot to me.
It does to me too. I have no doubt that we will. I know we came in contact with each other for a reason, for a purpose. It's so clear. It was a mystery to me at the beginning, but now I'm like,
we're just old, we're old souls, old wise souls, and I just appreciate you seeing me and recognizing that. I'm not trying to be different. I think that's what I've been trying to say the whole time to people is don't be different for the sake of being different. Make a difference. Do something that's going to impact and inspire people to be themselves. And that's what you do. So, bless you, friend. Well, we'll talk soon. Happy calendar New Year. And, just keep dropping some astrological knowledge on me,
Thank you. It's been lovely to spend an hour with you. I really appreciate you, Jake. I love all your questions. So we'll do it again.
Oh, definitely. Later, Kayama. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.